You can go after me then.
No, I gotta go first. Mine's super short. Hi guys. All right, so this is a dumb thing that I just had to throw out there real quick. I am because you know how we go through the playoffs and you have to sit there and watch the same commercials over and over again, and
Oh,
it
yes.
makes you crazy, right? So there's every year there's this commercial. Like last year it was Turtle Insurance or whatever it was, or I forget what it was. Something with
No. It was a Geico commercial.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Which are funny the first 60 times you see them, and then maybe some of them are hilarious, and some of them are even after the 70th,
the two girls on the treadmill, the guy,
right. That
yeah.
The one that's got me this year is the Verizon one, where the mother is like walking through the living room and says, oh, we got them great internet, and then the kid goes, and this like pimply like teenager or whatever with black hair comes up and says, "What? You don't have Verizon? You don't have FiOS?" Like the most obnoxious thing imaginable, like this kid. Yeah. I'm just thinking every time I see it, I want to say, "You pay for the friggin' internet, jerk." Right. Like it's just like, wait, you don't have FiOS? What's wrong with you? You're an idiot. It's like that kind of talking to his kid, and that's like, to me, like, what are we telling our children? Like, if one of my kids talked to me like that.
Yeah, I wish we had the alternate version of this commercial where the mother just winds up and smacks him right across the face.
I mean, I grew up the son of a Air Force lieutenant colonel, right? Like if I ever spoke to my parents that way,
yeah.
I mean, I would be thrown against the garage door. I was never beaten by my parents.
Like if one of my kids, sorry, that was me.
Ooh. Sorry. My father was a teacher, and he never used it in the classroom, but at the point that he taught was from the 50s to the early 90s. There was corporal punishment, and it was acceptable. And he had a paddle on the wall of his classroom that said, burned in it, Board of Education.
That's great. No, to me, I'm just astonished. And then you think about, like, this is the way. And I have a daughter, and I'm around kids a lot. And there is a certain way that they talk to adults that's very different, like, than when we were there. And you get used to it, and once in a while you have to throw yourself. You have to throw the fact that you're not just their friend at them, and like, wait a second, you gotta like respect me a little bit more than that. I said you can't go there this weekend. You can't go there. It's like that's how it works. That's how it worked for me. I'm not trying to be a jerk or whatever. And I'm rarely have to do that with my kids, but sometimes I just completely see the commercial like this, and I realize that this is actually how a lot of kids do talk to their parents these days. And this commercial just emphasizes it, and it plays against that whole thing of like, oh, parents don't possibly know anything about the internet. They have this, and this kid's like, you need FiOS to be able to do. It's like, oh my God, I just want to just his reaction just makes me angry every time I see it, and it just gets worse now because I'm sick of the commercial as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, go ahead.
So a couple of quick things. Mike, something happened today in the Met game. I know it's only 1:15, but it's not unprecedented, but it probably hasn't happened in a lot of years. And somebody went back and said 50 years was the last time he remembers it. And that was in the first inning, the Mets batted out of order.
Oh, my God.
They batted out of order.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
I love it.
A lot of times you can bat out of order late in the game, right? You pinch hit a few things, your scorecard gets screwed up, you make a mistake.
Wow.
It happened to them on the second batter.
I thought you were going to say in the first inning something interesting happened. That's like,
no, this is interesting. Hold on.
That's interesting.
Well, no, but it's baseball, so I know.
Listen. And this explains something, Russ, because I think it was Peter Body, who's a New York writer. I think he's a baseball writer. He put out a question regarding the Leafs in 2002 against the Islanders. Pat Quinn left someone off of the lineup sheet. He only had 19 guys on the lineup sheet. He left Robert Reichel off the lineup sheet, and they had to, he was on the ice, he was getting ready, and they said, okay, he's not on here, you can't play him. So they had to play with 19, and they actually won that game. They played with 19, and my response to him, because he asked, do Leaf fans remember this? And I said, well, yeah, it was probably easy to forget Robert Reichel based on how he played for the Leafs.
Right, but here's what happened. Like, teams always post the starting lineups on Twitter. So
right.
They posted it, and they had Asdrubal Cabrera hitting third. But you don't know what happens between Twitter and the manager, and that's why you bring a lineup card to the umpire. So they brought up the lineup card to the umpire. Cabrera hits second, he hits a double. They're calling the game. Even the guys calling the game say, well, something's going on here because Jim Riggleman's walking out to talk to the umpire. And then one of the other guys said, well, maybe there's something with the batting order, but even they weren't sure. And sure enough, Cabrera was supposed to hit third. So he got a double turned into an out. And, that makes it even worse.
So what do they do? Do they have the guy who's supposed to bat second, bat third?
It's 2 outs. It's 2 outs in a row. You're out of the inning.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I mean, you got a rookie manager there. So
yeah. And so that erased Wilmer Flores. And so, yeah, it's a brutal move that a rookie manager is going to get killed for. Now, as far as the Matt Harvey trade, and the only thing I could say is for the Dark Knight stuff,
yeah,
it was fun, but I always knew Harvey had an attitude. Mm-hmm. And I also knew that he never learned how to actually be a pitcher. He was a thrower. And when he came back from this rib injury in spring training, I remember tweeting to a buddy of mine, messaging him, hey, Matt Harvey's out of shape here. Look at him. He doesn't look right. And he had just had a rib injury operation where they took out that rib, whatever that's called.
Well, that's the thoracic outlet. And that's the thing that Stamkos had, right?
That's what Stamkos had. And his velocity was down, and people poo-pooed me. Oh, Russ, you're looking too much into it, yada, yada, yada. Well, now we're down the road here, and his velocity's down, and he's now on the Cincinnati Reds. By the way, he hasn't even reported to the Reds yet. Yeah. He's going to take the full 48 hours. So if you want to talk about, like, something that never happens in hockey, like, A, if a guy gets sent to the minors in hockey, no matter how good they are, they always go. And B, if a guy gets traded, other than Shipachyov, I can't remember a guy who really, didn't go down, by the way.
Well, I was going to ask that to bring it back to hockey. I was trying to think of somebody who was as much of a pain in the ass as Harvey has been to the Mets, being traded just for basically to get him off the team. And Avery wasn't traded to Dallas. He signed as a free agent there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So they traded him back to the Rangers because he was a pain in the ass.
They couldn't deal with him.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, Shipachyov's the only one who I could think of. Like they asked him to go for assignment and he didn't actually play.
Right.
And then as far as when a guy gets traded, guys always show up right away. And actually he's playing against his old team, so you think that he would actually go there and really volunteer to do anything. And no, he's going to miss the series so he could show up at his own time. And
I'm telling you, Russ, I'll
between the sports,
I'll bet you anything he doesn't show up. I'll bet you anything he says, I don't want to play for the Reds.
I was asked that question. If he doesn't show up, because the trade was already consummated and the other player traded from the Reds, the catcher, is in the Mets lineup and playing, I believe he'll get suspended. And I think he would have to meet with the commissioner and the Players Association, and something would happen beyond that. I think it would become that big of a deal.
Because it's really interesting what would happen if they would make them send somebody else in that trade, because they
could do that.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, if Harvey was like 3 days away from being a free agent,
right?
And so if the Mets traded him, the Mets legitimately needed a catcher, so you can't say that they did this just to screw Harvey. But Harvey probably wanted to be a free agent to choose the best scenario for him to, Cincinnati is a bandbox of a ballpark. You hit home runs if you breathe there. It's not conducive to a guy trying to get back on track of his career. Nope. So I mean, I'll bet you there's a chance that he said he bucks the trend and says, I'm not going there.
Yeah, I think that'll be a big deal though if he does, and we'll see. I mean, look, in the old days, as an example, Bobby Clark traded his son-in-law Peter. What was his last name?
Peter White.
Peter White to Utah.
Yeah.
So when you do want to get it even with a player, I do believe the Mets did get a catcher, but also did get even with Harvey. I think to a ballpark that's bad for pitching. Yeah.
I think Phil Esposito did the same thing. Remember, Alexander Salivanoff was his son-in-law.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty crazy. All right. Well, I like the batting out of order thing. That was fun. Do it every day.
You're so enthused about baseball. Just think.
No, I actually did think that's pretty funny. That reminds me of
4 more months of this.
Happens in Little League.
Yeah, that's a total Little League thing.
It is.
I mean, if you do that in Little League, you're completely humiliated. So I can't imagine.
Walter Matthau would walk out of the dugout.
How did they did what happened? Did he step up to the plate and like?
No, guy got
a hit.
He got a hit, and then they changed it.
And then the opposing manager went out to the umpire and showed him the lineup card, and the umpire looked at his lineup card that he got and said, "You're right," and then he went out.
That's awesome. All right, well there you go. All right, let's begin. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, May 9th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today, we're going to talk a little bit of rumors. We're going to talk a little bit about the series coming up. We're going to do a little bit of drafting, of a draft preview from us. We're going to have basically a little potpourri of a show. We'll take some questions from you as well. I think maybe we could start today, with a rumor. Let's start right off the bat with Erik Karlsson, because I wrote about Erik Karlsson today and what the latest is with this situation. And this is one of those strange situations, because remember now, Karlsson is not a free agent. He's not a UFA. He's got another year under his contract still. So he could still, the auto centers don't have to do anything. They could play him through this year. Mm-hmm. They could just keep, they could lose him for nothing, or they could trade him at the deadline and still do. Right. But the belief has always been, even in Karlsson's mind, picking up the puck at the end of the year last year, or what have you, I'll even right down to that, that he's going to go somewhere else this summer.
I agree. I'd be shocked if we see him in a Senators uniform at the start of training camp. I'd be shocked. Right.
Now there are a lot of teams that obviously, someone said to me, yeah, there's 30 teams that would like Erik Karlsson, which is true, and there would be 31 if Ottawa wanted to keep him.
Right.
But then there's the issue of Karlsson, of how good is Karlsson really, and he's obviously been a great player. Players do get paid on past performance, but he has fallen a little bit in the last year or so. And so people wonder, what he's asking for is, to be the highest paid defenseman, and he's among the top 5 defensemen in the league right now. So sure, he should be, but for how long is he going to be among the top 5 defensemen in the league? So
the things that are going to mitigate his value this summer in terms, if the Senators are looking to hit like a grand slam home run, they're sadly mistaken for a couple reasons. Yeah. One, he didn't have a great year. Now, you could say that's all the distraction of what was going on in Melnick and the bad team and that. But he was coming off that ankle surgery where they like shaved part of the bone off, right. And he's had the Achilles problem. He's the expectation is that now if he's a pure rental, it's a 1-year thing, then teams will pay probably above and beyond the usual rental price. But if it's like a team looking to lock him up long term, then the question of having 1 year left in the contract and the injury question mark and him being 28. I think will mitigate his value. So, if Ottawa wants to get the max, I don't think they're going to get the max for Erik Karlsson. If they want to get a good deal and a team is worthy and willing to take that risk on him, because there is risk there, then I think a deal will be done, and I think that will be the case.
Now,
good question. Yeah, that is a good. I still think there's a chance for the deal. I do. I do believe they'll make him that offer. Mm-hmm. And they'll do it over the summer before they have a chance to trade him. I have a feeling in the next couple of weeks we're going to hear an offer.
Right. Now they can officially make an offer at any point, right? At this point, they're already within the bounds, correct? I always forget how that works, but I think it's like, because his contract ends, can they not make an offer until July 1st? Is that true?
I'm sorry. Say again. They cannot contractually. They cannot make an official offer. They cannot approach his agent supposedly until July 1st.
Until like a year before he would become a free agent. So
right. That would be exactly a year. But they could get an indicator from.
Well, you can talk to him. Obviously he's on your team. You just can't make the deal. They can. I think they can talk to people. I think because if he's on your team, you can't sit there and say you can't talk to him, right? They can talk to him and see where he's at. They just can't put paper to pen, pen to paper, I guess is a better way to do it.
But Russ brought this up near the end of the season. Karlsson could very simply say to everybody through his agent, okay, you can trade for me. I don't have no trade. I don't think he has no trade protection. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not signing with anyone.
Right.
I'm going to be a free agent.
I'm going to go free agent. So right then and there, he screws Ottawa because Ottawa cannot shop him as, okay, here's a guy that you can sign. It's like, and another team can work on him, and that might just be lip service. But if he comes out and says that, then a team is not going to offer top dollar for him because the promise of being able to extend him for 8 years is one of the reasons that you try to trade for him now.
Right. Is he worth what you're going to? Is he worth? I mean, how much would many people say? Okay, he's $10 million a year player. Okay, so 8 years, $80 million. That just seems. It seems like what's going to happen, and yet it seems at the same time it seems like there's going to be like 4 years of that are going to be ridiculous, that are going to be terrible. Like it feels like okay, he's got 2 years maybe at the highest level, 3 or 4 years where he's a top 50 defenseman, and then who knows, right? So
here's the thing, I think because of the offensive ability, and even though speed is a part of it with him, it's not everything. Like, remember Sergei Gonchar? He could still play the power play at the end, and he wasn't even playing 5-on-5, and he was still pretty effective.
Yeah.
A guy like even Dale Howardchuk, when he was sort of at the end, could still be on the power play and be effective. I think Karlsson can do that even in his last couple of years. So I'm not that concerned about the injury toll. Like, I think if Forsberg was able to squeeze out extra years with the Flyers, there's no question to me that Karlsson can squeeze out years here.
It's just a question of if you base your value on Karlsson of the last 3 or 4 years, you're probably not getting that out of him over the next 4 or 5 years, just simply because he's getting older and he may lose a step. He'll still be, he's still a top pairing defenseman. He just may not be Norris Trophy caliber. I mean, it could take a year for him to bounce back from the injury that he had.
That was this year, Mike. I mean, maybe this was the year to bounce.
Right, exactly.
But he had 62 points, so like,
still had a great year, right? But at the same time, the other thing
minus 40.
Like when you talk about Gonchar and you talk about Howardchuk, you're talking about an era where they were so superior skaters to everyone else, right? And now in this era, like every defenseman coming in from juniors is almost as good a skater as Karlsson. I mean, he's maybe not as great, but they're closer. They're closer than it was back then with Gonchar, who was playing, where he was such a great skater. Howardchuk, such a great skater. I mean, you look at the defenseman coming in now, like, Provorov or anybody like that. I mean, their skating ability is close to that of Karlsson, and so it's not like you would think that when Karlsson gets older, that's going to fade and then not going to be as valuable, and it's just going to increasingly.
But there's more to Karlsson than just his speed. I mean, he's got incredible playmaking ability and on ice vision. The thing is though is that this year, because he's coming off the injury, there was always criticism of him being sort of a defensive liability because he was out there so much and he's not exactly his defense is controlling the puck and rushing the puck into the offensive zone. He's not a prototypical defenseman where it's not easy to walk around him. Sometimes it is, but I think you're still going to get that. It's just I don't know how much of that you're going to get over the next few years. He may not be the defenseman that he was, but he's still pretty damn good.
I mean, you're talking about him getting to 35.
Right.
And even with an injury, I still think he'll be as effective or more at 35 than what we're seeing out of Zdeno Chara now, as an example.
Yeah. No, I think that's true, and I think that's mainly because of the skating ability. Like I think that and I think that the playmaking is there, but I think it's mainly the skating ability. Now, when we think about where he could possibly go if he doesn't go to Ottawa, and I do think that Ottawa is still a really good chance, for a couple of reasons. One, I think he really wants to play in Ottawa. His wife, he likes it in Ottawa. Also, because I think he's more valuable to Ottawa than he is anybody else. I really do. I think that, at the end of the day, that's the team he is most valuable to, because Ottawa is a team that doesn't have a whole lot else going on right now.
I think those points are valid, Ek, but I think, again, they're mitigated by the fact that I don't think he wants to play for Eugene Melnyk, and I don't think Eugene Melnyk wants to keep him because
that's the bigger one, perhaps. I think
Right.
I think he's okay. I don't think he cares about playing for Eugene Melnick so much as Eugene Melnick doesn't want to keep him. I think
Right.
that's probably
he
more.
doesn't want to spend. Eugene Melnick does not want to spend
Yeah.
$80 million US for 8 years on Erik
Right.
Karlsson when there are question marks, and when he doesn't. He's probably going through. The Senators are probably going through a 2 or 3 year rebuild. They're probably going to trade. A guy like Hoffman or somebody else. They've already traded Broussard. They've already traded Phaneuf. They may trade Cody Ceci over the summer because he's expecting big money. This is a reset based on finances. So if that's the case, then you're not. They may play the political game of saying we made an offer to Erik Karlsson on July 1, and he spurned the offer. So here, okay, now we have to move him because. We have to get assets for him.
Right.
But I don't think I think it's going to be one of those cosmetic offers that they really don't mean it. They really don't want him to accept it.
Yeah, and they have to make the offer. You're right. I mean, they're going to just get killed if they don't. By their fan base and by their season ticket holders. They've got to make that offer, and in a way, it's part of the breakup. Like it's part of the breakup of this situation, right? So they have to do that. Now, as to where he would go. We talk about all the teams that are available, and I've been doing a lot of research, talking to different people, and there's a lot of teams looking for defensemen. And
like every team,
and he's like we said, he's great. He does change your salary structure a lot. He changes things there in a big way. So there are teams out there that are going to have a really difficult time to do it. Like for say the Maple Leafs. We'll start there. That about I don't know, about 5 or 6 months ago. I was told that there was just no way that the Leafs and Ottawa would get together on a trade for Erik Karlsson. That just wasn't going to happen for a couple of reasons. One, neither team wanted to give the other team assets in their own division. Like basically, it wasn't just a matter of Ottawa didn't want to see Karlsson on the Leafs. The Leafs didn't want to see like Kapanen or whatever is going to take on Ottawa. Really, when I talked to people yesterday and the last couple of days, it really feels like Toronto, if they're going to take one of these. If they're going to take a big shot, which I'm not sure that they're going to do, but if they're going to go for a big gun, they're really more focused on Tavares, and not that they're going to get Tavares or not that they're going to get Karlsson, but I think that Tavares is obviously a player that they can sign, and then they can control what they trade away and where they trade away to make the space. That seems like the biggest thing there, but it is possible now that I've heard that Ottawa has said to them, listen. And they've said to Montreal as well, we'll talk, we'll talk even though you're in the division. So
right, they'll talk, but you think the price for Ottawa, for Toronto and Montreal will be the same as Vegas? Not a chance in hell. They'll make the teams in their division pay more through the nose to get them because they can. Because
I think it'll be the same everywhere, but I
don't think so.
I think it'll be high everywhere is what I think. I mean, I think it's going to be high. I don't think it's going to be like, they're willing to take less for him to go to Vegas. I mean, they're not going to do that.
But this is one point that's been, pretty much confirmed since the deadline. The Leafs, Lou Lamoriello was looking for a second first-round pick in a deal. Right. And if you extrapolate from that, what that would have meant, that would have been meant trading James Van Riemsdyk, because that was the only piece that they really had who was a rental that they could get a first-round pick for. And if they would have gotten that second first-round pick, then they conceivably were going to make an offer for Karlsson. Now that's going far afield here, but if they're willing to trade, to get a first-round pick to make that deal, then in the summer, I think they would be willing to do the same thing. So I don't see them not being interested, but I think there is a limit of how much they would give them. They're not going to give them 2 first-round picks and William Nylander for Erik Karlsson, especially when Erik Karlsson's only got a year left of his contract. That's why I think the value is mitigated because he's only got 1 year. And if he does come out and say, I'm not signing with anybody, then a prospect and a first-round pick might be all they get for him.
Yeah,
might be. I do have breaking news.
Yeah.
So I just saw on Facebook a picture of Uncle Floyd interviewing somebody, like a man on the street interview in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Heck, this is startling. I didn't even know Uncle Floyd was still around.
Who's Uncle Floyd?
Everybody knows who Uncle Floyd is, Mike. He was like a local guy who would be on like UHF channels and had like a very low budget comedy show, and I always liked it. I don't know if you liked it, Ek.
Yeah.
That's like Commander Tom in Buffalo. That was the guy who did the cartoons in the morning for the
But
kids.
that's it. It was just a quick. Just wanted to break in with that because I have not seen a picture of him in like 40 years.
Great. I'm sure that they're gonna have the breaking bulletin on CNN. Uncle Floyd is back.
That's really funny. No, I totally agree. Now, okay, here's sorry, just getting a text about something involving Karlsson just now as we speak. But okay, so next team on my list, the St. Louis Blues, and the Blues are a team that has some people that I trust at the NHL, and it's funny how much the NHL knows about things like this. They believe that the Blues might be the favorite quietly in the background. That
I'd be surprised at that for one in one aspect. The Blues, even if they trade Bouwmeester, and I know Bouwmeester's got, I think, a year left in his contract, the Blues' problem is not defense. They've got Parayko, they've got Pietrangelo, they've got some decent young defensemen. Their problem is they're weak up the middle, and their scoring dried up at the end of the year. I mean, they traded Paul Stastny. They had injuries, guys like Fabry and Schwartz was in and out of the lineup. I mean, they've got a lot of youngsters, and that could be Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou and Clem Costa. And they've got young pieces, which would be something that Ottawa would want because they're cheap, and they could hold on to them for 6 or 7 years. So I mean, that I think is what makes the puzzle sort of fit. But I don't think that St. Louis is going to go all out to get Karlsson, because I don't think that's the main area of. I think there's a better chance of them going all out for Tavares because that's a bigger need for them than defense.
Mike, here's something that's counterintuitive, but plays into X argument. St. Louis is ranked 29th in special teams this year, only 15% on the power play.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is legit awful for them.
And he could run. He definitely could run the power.
Run a power play. And their defense this year took Parayko is obviously phenomenal, but the rest of their defensemen, everyone took.
Pietrangelo was early on. I don't know if he got hurt, but Pietrangelo in the first 2 months was a Norris Trophy candidate.
He was,
but then by the end of the year, that Blues team was desperate for defensive help. They really were. They were completely. And as they were coming down the stretch, when you watch those games, and they could not keep the puck out of the net. We can blame the goaltender all you want to.
I was going to say, come on, let's share some blame here. Jake Allen was a sieve.
No, that's true, but at the same time, I think you also have to look at the defense on that situation.
You do. It's not all him. I would say it's 55% him, but it's not all him.
Yeah, and the defense has the Blues. They do want to. They could actually move a pretty good defenseman, or back to Ottawa in this deal too, which is good. Who might just need a new start. Maybe we're talking about Bouwmeester or Pietrangelo or somebody like along those lines. If they wanted to, if this deal was made, you'd have to assume that they would be able to talk to Karlsson. And I think this is something you can safely assume in general, that people will be able to talk to Karlsson about a deal so they'll know when they make the trade that they can extend him. I think that's something that you'll know ahead of time for the most part. So the Blues are now the next team is an interesting one, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, the Blackhawks are, we sit there and say, okay, they've obviously, they have salary cap issues for sure. They're going to be right up against it. What are they going to do? How are they going to make this move? But they also have a severe desire, I was told, to make some kind of major trade, and whether that means, moving, Duncan Keith out there, moving Seabrook out of there. Both don't have a whole ton of value now, but both could be moved to it in the right situation, or it means moving one of their forwards. I mean, we would say everybody but Kane and Taves is probably available, and at that point, you could even say, is one of the Taves possibly available? I don't think Kane's not available.
And this is the problem. If you're putting together a deal involving Karlsson going to the Blackhawks, and the Blackhawks wanting to include Seabrook or Keith in the deal, the last team that will do that is Ottawa, because there's long-term money there, and they don't want to add money. That's the whole reason that they may trade Karlsson is because they don't want to sign him for $80 million.
But don't eliminate the fact that there could be a third team involved.
Yeah, right. Well, and that was what I was going to say. But the problem is that then you're putting Ottawa in the place of being the middleman and probably having to shave salary to make the Seabrook deal or the Seabrook contract or the Keith contract palatable. And that's the thing is that they don't want to retain money either.
Mm-hmm.
They retained a little money on Phaneuf because Phaneuf was making $7 million a year, and they had to make that deal palatable to LA to make the thing work. But you're talking about Seabrook making almost $7 million. You're talking about Keith making 5.5, but for a long time. I mean, I don't think Ottawa's the team that's going to be that sort of middleman in that type of deal.
It would be hard to imagine, but I know the Hawks are very creative, and they could try to figure. They could be the kind of team that tries to figure it out.
Maybe the Hawks would be the one. Maybe
if you're talking about a 3-way trade, I'm going to text Kevin Allen. I'm just.
I think
maybe the Hawk, maybe Stan Bowman would be the one to say, okay, for me to get Seabrook off my hands, I'll retain $2 million and make him a $5 million defenseman, and maybe somebody will bite on that. Not Ottawa, because Ottawa's in the rebuild, but there's another team out there that's so hard up for a defenseman that they would take Seabrook at $5 million and say, okay, that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Right. We're somebody who believes, that Seabrook still has something left beyond what we saw this year. Which. You don't know how hurt a guy was or whatever. You don't know a bunch of things about a player, so it's hard to tell. You have to do some real research into that. You'd have to make sure you did your background to make sure that you're getting the right trade in that one. But it's possible. I mean, Seabrook, was a very good player not too long ago. So, just because he struggled this year, and Keith the same way. I mean, Keith at times was even worse than Seabrook at times this year. So
he had a really bad year. He did.
They really did. So maybe a change of pace is helpful to them. Now the next team would be the Vegas Golden Knights. And now we've talked about, obviously, they were the one who everybody talked about at the deadline. I think the best thing that could have happened to them was not making that trade at the deadline. I just feel like the way that they're, who knows what they would have had to give up, and the way they're going right now, with chemistry, why would they do anything at this point? I
don't think McPhee is looking to make big contract deals anyhow. He's not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I do think that the deadline deal included Bobby Ryan, and I think that was part of the whole concept. From what the research I've done, it does seem like that was something that they weren't giving up that much as terms of players because they were taking on so much salary, and they're the only team that could possibly have done that. But at the same time, and I've also heard Bobby Ryan. One source told me Bobby Ryan's name could be included in the Blues deal too, but I don't know exactly how that plays out either. Which does give him another center, like you're saying, Mike.
The only thing I would say to that is, if that's the case, then St. Louis is acquiring Karlsson as purely a 1-year rental.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because Ryan's contract, I think he's got 4 years left. It's over $7 million.
Yeah.
And if you're, unless you're just saying we're walking away from Bouwmeester and we give him Bouwmeester's money, but he's gonna expect more than $6 million. You're talking about Karlsson making $8, $9, $9.5, $10 million.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Here's I think you're onto something with that, Mike, for sure. The thing about it with Karlsson in Vegas, Brandstrom's having a really good year. Brandstrom might just be elevated next year, and you don't have to spend this kind of money.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, I mean they've got so many guys having good years. It's and such a good chemistry. Now, obviously, Erik Karlsson is a great person, great player. And I mean, he's not going to mess up your chemistry at all. He's going to come in there and he's going to do what he does, and he'll help them. I mean, and he could make Vegas extremely dangerous. I mean, they're already extremely dangerous, but in addition to Erik Karlsson, could make them, and this is why they obviously tried to get it done at the deadline. But moving to Montreal, the next team. Now, Montreal is the one team. The one thing with Montreal, there's a couple things with Montreal. One, again, when you have to always take the taxes into consideration in Montreal with extended contracts, and whether or not Karlsson, that extra money matters to Karlsson. It probably does. I mean, it's like 20% of his contract goes away when he goes to Montreal. So that's why you don't see many Montreal Canadiens with them signing these $10 million players or whatever. It's a tough spot for them to be in. And and the Montreal Canadiens. But the Montreal Canadiens, the Molsons have said to them to management, do whatever you have to do this summer to change things around without a rebuild. That's what I was told. So they don't want to rebuild. They're going to do whatever they can do without a rebuild.
Which I think goes hand in hand with what I said last week after the lottery, that if you looked at the top 5 teams picking, the one that has the best chance of trading out of their pick is Montreal, because there's pressure on them, on Bergevin, to win now. And if there's an opportunity for him to trade that pick and get somebody that helps them right away, I think it's stupid. I think it's short-sighted, but I'll bet you anything that if there's a chance of one of those picks being traded, it's Montreal that is the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, and
I think there's a chance of that. I do. But here's the thing, Eck. You could take the label off Bud Light, put some other label on it, it's still Bud Light. So how much can you do in the offseason to really change this Montreal Canadiens team? It's more than just a piece or two.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I think Pacioretty's gone this offseason. I don't think
so. I don't think they're going to do it.
They're trying. I think.
Well, this is the problem. I don't see any team out there trading the piece that they need the most for them to improve. There is no number 1 center out there for trade.
Right.
Now, okay, if they're in on Tavares, they're in on Tavares. But do I think that John Tavares is going to Montreal? Not a chance in hell. So, I mean, I don't know how they address number 1 center. They can they can go out and trade for Ryan O'Reilly from Buffalo, or there are other centers out there who might improve their situation up the middle. But until they get that linchpin number 1 center that teams in their division have with Stamkos, with Barkov, with Matthews, with Eichel, they're not going anywhere. So
there is a number 1 center that they're talking to. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but they're not. It is a number 1 center. It is a big center on a team that we've already discussed, and it is possible that they could go for they could make a big play for this. Again, it's a tough situation to think about actually happening, but they would be a number 1 center. You're right, that is their top priority. I don't think it's Tavares. I agree with you on that one. It's not going to be Tavares.
He wouldn't go there anyhow, I don't think.
No, this is more of a straight up trade. And it would require the player to waive his no trade to go to Montreal too. So that's not easy either. So the final team and the dark horse is the New York Islanders with Eriksson. And now this comes into play. Obviously, we're hearing the Lou Lamoriello rumors and all that stuff happening now, trying to keep Tavares there. They don't seem to be panicking right now about losing Tavares yet. I haven't gotten that sense. And does Lulu comes in, they sign Erik Karlsson, suddenly the world looks a lot better to Tavares.
You're now asking me to suspend belief where Lou is going to give Erik Karlsson top of the market money. I'm not buying it.
Right.
They have the money.
If he goes to New York, he is not coming on a discount.
Right. No, I don't think he's coming on a discount, but I think that they have the money to spend. And
so let me get this straight. They're going to trade for Erik Karlsson, and they're going to sign him for top dollar, and then they're going to re-sign Tavares for top dollar.
Right.
And they still have not addressed the problem that has caused them to be crap the last few years, which is goaltending.
Well, yeah, they have to address goaltending, but you don't have to get a $10 million goalie.
No, but you also have to have you're going to be trading assets to get Karlsson. So the assets that are using to get Karlsson, and honestly, defense. I mean, don't get me wrong. Any team can use Erik Karlsson, but defense, in and of itself, is not the Islanders' problem.
I totally disagree there. I think defense is exactly the Islanders' problem. Like,
no. I mean, they don't have a rock solid defense, but it's a decent defense. Their goaltending was the issue.
Yes.
No, their goaltending is definitely the issue, but they have all the same kind of defensemen. They don't have like the same kind. They don't have a shutdown defenseman really.
They Pulak. They've got Boychuk. They got.
They didn't really utilize Pulak the way he utilized, to be honest.
Well, no, he could turn into that for sure, but
not a shutdown. He will be the offensive guy. But the offensive guy, But the point is, like, Boychuk's offense is not there anymore. So Boychuk should be the shutdown guy at this point.
Right. I mean, there's still Boychuk and Letty are they're still kind of their top guys. You know?
No, Letty's great, but Pulak should be right there after Letty offensively, and then you make Boychuk the shutdown guy. I don't. And Mayfield's a pretty good defenseman. Like, I don't see a big problem with their defense. I don't.
No, I mean it's. I don't know.
It's better. There's every team in the league.
Every team can be better, but I really have heard that that is their concern. Like when I've talked to people around them, that is where they see it.
Sign Brandon Manning, and it would help their defense. Like, I'm just saying.
Right, and and I'm not disputing what you're saying, but the fact that if that's what's coming out of the Islanders, that is why they need to fire Garth Snow. Because if you think that the problem for that team is their blue line, and you're not, is this the goaltender mentality that you're blind to the fact that your goaltending was crap last year? I mean, that's what cost you a playoff spot. Is that Halak and Grice were not even? They were the worst tandem in the NHL. They were the worst. So improve that, and that's a start.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean that's where they've got to get a solid goalie. There's no two ways about it. Couldn't agree more. But we'll see where they play this out. They're not happy with their defense either. So that's all I have with it. That's all I have with that. And like I said, I call them a dark horse. I don't even have them on the rumor chart as a team that I see them going to. But let's move on and talk. Let's talk some Hurricanes, Russ.
All right, so I did watch the press conference. I watched about 15 minutes of it. I don't know how long it went because I had to hop on Sirius. So here's what I got out of it. Rod Brind'Amour is well liked in Carolina. We know that. He'll probably sell some tickets, even though he was there already as an assistant. But as the coach, he could go out there and I think sway some people. So that's fine. They're keeping most of the coaching staff. They've kept Don Waddell. They're keeping the goalie coach because he has a Stanley Cup ring. Let me just explain one thing that I think is the biggest misnomer in sports. Just because you are part of a Stanley Cup winning coaching staff and your team has won it shouldn't give you a pass for life. And the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending last year was so abysmal, you would think that would be a position they would change instantly, and they're not. And they're not making a lot of changes. Actually, Brind'Amour just talked about bringing in one person. And so he'll probably do that. He didn't say what kind of coach he's going to be. He didn't say what kind of style they're going to play. He just said they expect more out of everybody. And he did say that he felt like if everybody was better, they probably all could stay. But, that's not going to happen. They're going to make some moves. So I learned nothing. I really learned nothing other than they're going to hold the players more accountable. And Ron Brind'Amour is well liked. And he's going with what's comfortable. And the team is by keeping most everybody there that was there last year when they had problems. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be shocked that they re-signed Cam Ward. Like, at this point, I don't know what they're going to do. I still don't know. If you're a fan, you don't know what they're going to do yet. You have no idea.
Here's a quote from Dundon. I've come to the conclusion that strategy is pretty overrated. I don't believe that strategy differences are as important as getting the right culture and the right attitude. I think he means Brind'Amour gives us the best chance of getting the most out of our players. We're pretty far down the road to get where he wants the team to be, but the NHL proves that the best players don't always win. The best teams are the ones that work the hardest. No, it's the team with the most talent that works the hardest. You don't have enough talent. You've got some talent. You don't have a good enough goaltender. You're overloaded on defense, and you can't score. And until you address that, your team is not going to make the postseason.
I mean, I was legitimately – Steve Cooley's asked me – he asked me the greatest question, and I have to – and I'm only going to repeat it because I just felt like you can never be prepared for this. He said, the bottom three teams in the Metro were the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Hurricanes. Who's in the best shape going forward? And I said, well, I don't think any of them are in good shape for next year to make the playoffs, unless, obviously if the Rangers were to get Tavares, which I didn't bring up, that would change that. But if they don't, I still would take the Rangers because they moved out guys like Rick Nash and turned things over, and they're ahead of the other teams in that direction. Carolina hasn't done that yet. So I feel like Carolina, even though they are close, they still are far enough away that they're not a playoff team.
Right. And
significant changes. And one of them is you either have to get a goalie to push Darling or you have to push Darling as your backup. And to me, it doesn't seem like it's going to go start off that way at least.
And this, if you could pick the draft that it was the worst draft for them to pick in the top 5, this is the worst draft. Not to say that the draft is bad and the top 5 is bad, but the strengths of the Canes right now are blue line and wing. And the top 5 products in this draft are wing and defense.
Right.
So I don't know if that means they trade that pick, which I don't think they should. I mean, because Svechnikov or Brady Tkachuk or Zadina will be good players, but they're going to have to make a decision to trade either a defenseman or a winger to get stronger up the middle. And if they can't get stronger up the middle, they're spinning their wheels. And they also, as Russ said, they have to get a goaltender too. So, good luck, Don.
Yeah, you're right. No, I mean, it's interesting.
This is a big deal. Like
yeah.
And I'm very open. Like I'm trying to keep an open mind here, but we're a couple of months down the road in this new ownership. And I think they've addressed the problem of bringing in more fans by hiring Brind'Amour. I don't know if they've addressed the goaltending problem or the coaching problem of last year by almost keeping everybody else the same. I don't think they had totally fully addressed the GM problem. I think they fixed it,
right?
But I don't think they fixed it long term. They only asked what Brind'Amour's contract was, and it's 3 years. He wouldn't give the terms. How long is Waddell's contract for?
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know. So, there's a lot.
Or is he just still going off the contract he had before? Like he was president, and
he could be. And so, there's all these questions. And do you still? Here's another question. Okay, this one is a real good debatable one that you could go either way. But something that came out in the press conference, and Don Waddell was the one who said it, was he's on the phone a lot with Tom Dundon because Dundon still lives in Dallas, but he's in Carolina every week.
Right.
Is that enough if you want to be that hands-on owner that he's talking about that wants to handle all that he wants to handle? That's right. Don't you think that that's another thing?
No, I do think that's a very big other thing. I completely agree with you. It's a huge.
I get that he could jet back and forth, but I'm just saying,
a lot of owners do that, but it's just, I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough spot to be in, and if you're not going to be there all the time, you're really depending on heavily. Now Waddell can handle it, but and Dudley's in there too, so you have to.
Yeah, Dudley is like for Hurricanes fans. He is the hope that
he's a saving grace. Yeah.
Yes, better things will happen. We don't know what Brind'Amour will do as a head coach. We know what Don Waddell did before. We don't know if he's going to just be like a steady influence and not a major influence on trades. And maybe that's going to be Dudley. We don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of team they're going to be. They haven't told us they're going to be up tempo. They haven't told us they're going to be defensive. They haven't told us anything.
Here's the other thing about that. I'm a huge proponent of this. I never think it works when you have an assistant coach who's been there for such a long time on the same team jump into the head coaching role. It's such a different dynamic, and because the assistant coach is often the good cop in the good cop bad cop scenario. So players get closer to the assistant coaches.
Isn't that what happened? Isn't that what happened with Dave Lewis in Detroit? He was an assistant coach for a decade, and then he became head coach. And
happened with Craig Berube in Philadelphia.
Temporarily there for that.
Yeah, now assistant coaches can definitely jump into head coaching roles, but not in the same place they've been. Not with the same players they've been, because the relationships are deep, and these guys spend a lot of time together. And they, Brind'Amour is a player friendly type guy. Obviously, played the game. And he's got to now be the hard ass. That's just not an easy thing to transition into from the same team. I'm not a fan of it. It's really hard to do. I've seen players. I haven't really seen it pulled off in a way that I can say, okay, that it works there.
We did see online that Tom Dundon from the original press conference, somebody put the quote out there that he was going to shake up the culture. He's done the opposite so far.
Yeah, no, he's just enhanced. He's betting on the culture, because he hasn't been able to get anybody from the outside to come into the culture. So yeah, I agree. That's. I mean, I feel bad for Brindamore, and I think Tocchet sort of faces the same thing. Tocchet's an assistant too, but yeah, I don't know. I think Brindamore is more than qualified to be a head coach. Like, I talked to people around because I was curious. We've never seen him as a head coach, and people really do believe. There's a lot of people in the NHL who believe that he can be a really good head coach, but because he has the intelligence for it, and he has but the way this is going to play out, the dynamic thing he's got to play through, that's really tricky.
It is tricky because he talked about there's no real special sauce to a winning attitude, but he knows how to do it, but he didn't convey it today.
Yeah, and these players are going to come in really looking for something different from him.
The guidance, yes.
They're going to look for something different, and they know him so well. I mean, he's been there for like 4 years, I think, as an assistant. So that's a significant amount of time. I mean, granted they have a lot of young players, but this is, by the way, is also when I was doing some digging on Carolina. This is another place where Rick Nash could end up, I was told. I have to dig into that further, but this is a place where where Nash could end up playing.
Oh boy, lucky.
They got to come up with something. A little bit of before we're gonna end with a draft thing from Russ, but I wanted to do a little X-Addict thing for you guys today. So this is a game that I had when I was a kid, and I found it online. It's pretty funny. I was looking for it. This came out in 1959. Okay. It's called Hockey. I don't know why. We used to joke about the name of this. It's like Hockey. And I never was quite sure why it was called that. It's here's the exciting inside the box. All right. But where it's also Hockey, you can see. 1958.
For trademark purposes,
I bet you anything it was.
It had to be a trademark thing, huh? Yeah, you're probably right. So here's the actual game itself. This is a game that it's not bubble hockey or route hockey-ish. It's got little things that pop up to shoot a ball through. So it's like, it's kind of more like you see the basketball version of this more often. Probably, this one particularly doesn't have the goalie. Actually, it just has
I know. I can see what it does. Yeah,
this is like the game that you played when we were kids, where you had a tabletop at school with with a penny, shooting it. Oh
yeah, it kind of has that thing to it. Yeah, this is more more like each of these things like flip up. These little metal things. They're like flippers.
It catapults it.
Right, it catapults it exactly. And so this is 1958. I just love like the graphics on this thing and stuff like that are just really. I was trying to figure out actually if this is the goal behind it. I believe it is.
Yeah.
This. So it's. I don't know why there's a net.
So why do they have a net?
I don't know why there's a net there, and obviously you would need a goalie. Actually, put something on here to block that.
Or
behind there.
No, this is with 6 attackers, so that's why the goalie's
right. There's like no. There's nothing there. So. And it's the kind of thing where the ball would end up like stuck along the wall. You have to push it into one of these holes. So it's that kind of game. It's you can you can get it all for $60 on Etsy.
Oh boy!
I don't think you're getting it to play though. I think you're really getting it just to look at it.
Oh yeah, this is historical more than anything else. I mean, 58. You're talking about 10 years before the the expansion of hockey from 6 teams. So this is there was a board game at all involving hockey at that point. It's pretty surprising. So this is like, and that's early. That's very early on there. So there you have Hockey, 1958. So Russ, you have but by the way, if you have an X-Addict thing, send it to me at Eklund@HockeyBuzz.com. Put X-Addict in the subject and let us know what you have. If it'd be great if you could just shoot a video or something like that about with it or whatever, that would be phenomenal. We'd love to put that on.
I'm surprised Jody hasn't said anything about X-Addict yet. Like, you better start selling some of the stuff in yours.
No, what she's looking for in X-Addict is the broom to clear out all the dust.
She's trying to find the attic. We don't even know where it is. You can't even see it at this point. It's more like the joke is that I arrive at a place and explode into the space, like no matter where it is. Like if I'm at a hotel, I explode when I get to a hotel room. It's just like I just spread out right immediately from where I am. Yeah, we're not the neatest people in the world. Anyway, Russ, what do you have in the
Okay. So for the NHL draft, let's talk about Joel Farabee. And if people want to see where my rankings are, they can go to sportsology.com. I'm not going to talk about where he's going to go, but I'm just going to talk about the player. So he's a 6 foot, like 180-pound winger, left winger. And like Mike talked about, he'll be in that top 10 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If he isn't in the top 10, he'll be right after that. But I think he's a top 10 guy. And when you're looking at that kind of guy, these days, we're not worried as much about size. And I've been next to him and I've seen him, and I think he could probably put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle still. But even with the way he is right now, he is so elusive and so hard for defenders to cover him that he always seems to come up with scoring chances when you don't think there's one out there. And so, he finds the open space. He has a great shot, but he's also really creative. And he is also that guy that you want out on the ice, late in periods, late in the game, because he will just find something out of nothing. And the skating's great. The hockey IQ is terrific. When he plays with top players, it's arguable, when he plays with a Jack Hughes or someone, that he makes them better too. And so he is one of those guys that I think right now isn't being talked about enough. Now, he is an NTDP guy, so certainly he gets talked about.
Right.
But I still don't think he gets talked about enough. And I think, I just have this feeling if he were 6'3", he would be, in the top 3 in the draft.
Right.
And so somebody's going to get a guy that will be an absolute impact player in the NHL when he gets there someday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about this guy. And that's why when I always say that, you can never fully pin down a draft, you can't, right? Because some teams will not tell you, but they still will draft out of need. And they may not even tell anybody that, but they may still look at things and say, listen, we're deficient in this. We're going for this. And once one team does that, and once one other team picks off the board that everybody else has, it changes everything.
Yeah, it does. You see
it. He had 15 goals, 25 assists in 26 games for the US NDT.
Yeah, pretty good.
Not bad. And the thing is, Russ, it's like you said, 6 foot 164 are his dimensions.
Is it 164? Wow, I didn't realize it was that low.
That's what HockeyDB has. Now we'll find an update of that at the combine in next month. Because
I guess he's probably 170, but will probably play, in the middle of his career, 180, 185.
But right now, based on that, you're getting sort of the same vibe that Mitch Marner had. He was 5'11", 6 foot, but slight of build, and whether he'll be able to build on that frame and get stronger. But right now, the player as is got top end talent. So that's what a lot of these teams have to sort of get away from the mentality of, okay, can this guy get really big? There is room in the NHL now for smaller players to succeed.
I'll give you a good example. I just wrote about Sam Girard not that long ago, and when I went and looked up his weight, and I got it from the NHL's website, so I have to trust it, it still said 162 pounds.
Right.
And he is surviving in the NHL, scoring. He had 20-something points as a defenseman at 160-something pounds. So I do think it is possible. And Marner is certainly doing it. And Marner has put on a little bit of muscle, and I think Harvey will do it the same way as Marner. I think he has a little bit bigger of a frame, but not much. Yeah. But a little bit bigger.
Yeah, 6 feet is not short,
No.
But at the same time, you can
definitely structure and everything. Just because you're 6 feet doesn't mean you're going to be you could be 6 feet, 200 pounds and be perfectly proportioned, and someone else could be 6 foot, 180 and be perfectly proportioned.
Right, completely. It is interesting to me, you bring up that he's a winger, and we talked about before, you go back 10 years and everybody was a center, right? It was it's just amazing to me. We've really seen this whole thing of okay, we need puck moving defensemen and wingers. Yeah. So suddenly all these guys 5 years ago decided, okay, well, maybe they were playing wherever they're playing. You're gonna be a puck moving defenseman, you're gonna be a winger, because you got a better chance at the NHL.
But think about this. How many guys we talk about every year, go into the drafts and they're listed as a center.
Yeah.
Then we almost never see them at center. The Leafs had 2 of them. Even Scott Lawton, who played center for a little while, then got moved to the wing this year. I mean, most of these guys that are on the list as a center don't ever play center in the NHL.
Yeah.
Marner played as a right winger when London won the Memorial Cup. He played the center the year after.
Right.
He played center the year before.
Year before, not the year.
Yeah. So but he's never played. I don't think he's played a shift at center in his NHL career, and he's never going to, because he can play make on the wing.
Well, look at the best example of that this year was Claude Giroux. I mean, for crying out loud, Giroux, the center his entire life. You would have expected a big pushback for telling him you're going to play on the wing. from most players, it's like we've heard like from Stamkos or whatever, when you're going to play on the wing, it's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
Goes to the wing and scores 100 points for the first time in his career. It's crazy. And I talked to somebody about this recently, and they said, they really think that, and this was a funny theory. This is because this is an old school hockey guy. And he said the 2-line pass has made wingers way more effective. The lack of a 2-line pass over the last, and we're looking at a decade of no 2-line pass now,
Okay.
12 years has made wingers way more effective in scoring. And made centers have to be way more responsible defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing, and that's a great point, and I'm going to build on that point. I think now when teams are looking at true centers, like someone they really believe is going to play center, I think they're looking more at the Bo Horvat types than they are looking at what we saw in the 80s and 90s, where they're the really high-scoring, big playmaking types.
Like the Adam Oates center, right. that.
Yeah, the Adam Oates centers, there's very few of those guys now.
Yeah, they're looking for centers with physical stature.
Yes.
And
that are good defensively, they have to be
defensively with the other part of that equation. Yes.
Right. And if you get somebody who is a playmaker on top of having those skills, then you're talking about a Matthews.
Like Pierre-Luc Dubois. Again, we have to give full credit to Jarmo Kekalainen and the staff in Columbus, because when everybody threw a fit that they said he was going to play center, they sent him back. They made him play center. He did well. They brought him up. And with his physical stature and the way he played center this year, he is a center. They were right.
Yeah.
And Puljujarvi is still in the AHL.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that, really, guys like Giroux will tell you flat out that the not having defensive responsibility probably has more to do with his points than anything else. Like the fact that he doesn't have to think, because the centers really have a ton to pick up, especially with puck moving defensemen the way they are now. Centers are picking up so many players.
Point guards of the team, and we don't really look at it that way in hockey, but they really are. And I used to play point guard, and really it's a difficult position because even though I had a really good shot, I ended up playing point guard because I had a defensive mind. And when you're in the NHL, you have to have a defensive mind at center. You can't be a completely offensive center in this league. It doesn't work. Yeah,
because you're picking. Not only are you having to worry about other puck moving defensemen and picking up your spot in the slot back when you're covering on the defense end, you're also having to drop back a lot when the defenseman flies past you on your team. So there's a lot of times when the centers are constantly in the mode of like, picking up for a defenseman who's come in. So. Yeah, center has changed a ton, and I don't know if it's the 2-line pass or what it is exactly. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, but I think it's a combination of 2-line pass and the fact that defensemen now, we have like 60% of them are puck moving defensemen now. It's kind of it just feels like
it's higher than that. I mean, really, when we're talking about a defensive defenseman now, we're not talking about like Jeff Bukaboom or Chris Terrian.
Yeah, like a Luke Richardson. It's not around anymore.
We're not talking about those guys anymore. We're talking about guys that can skate really well.
Yeah.
Still have a really good first pass, can still pass very well, but also can defend. And they don't even have to be fully physical anymore.
And that's why, like, big defensemen who may be slowing down, who have had injuries like a Shea Weber, I still think Shea Weber is a great defenseman, but Chara and him, they're sort of an anachronism now. It's just they may not be able to keep up with the speed of the league and with their big, at least with Weber, his big contract. That's an albatross around Montreal's neck.
Like really, in a perfect world, like Ryan McDonough, when his offense goes a little bit, because he's not a great offensive player, can be a perfect shutdown defenseman in this league.
This would be the perfect opportunity this summer for Montreal to move Shea Weber while he still has value to a team that is desperate for defensive help. But based on the mentality of that organization and where we think they're going, there's not a chance in hell they're doing it. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot.
It's not that, Mike, too. They do charge a lot for tickets. They do need a certain amount of names.
I get that, Russ. But the thing is, when you have a guy who's got the length of his contract, the amount that he's being paid, and the fact that he may be declining, and you will not be able to get rid of him in a couple years, and you really need to rebuild, even though you're basically saying that you're not going to. It's just smart management to make that move, but they won't do it.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, he only played 26 games, but he had 16 points.
Yeah.
If you average that out, he still had a Shea Weber year.
I'm still saying he's a good defenseman, but okay, what is he? 33? He's got 32 or 33. He's got 2 or 3 at most good years left. And this is when you need to move him if you're going to move him. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck with him.
Actually, in August, he'll be 33. You know what? I'm not ready to move Shea Weber. I think they could stop in a 2-year window. Listen, I mean, you can't move everybody, Mike. I mean, your argument is always you got to move them for assets. And then I just got off the radio, and we just talked about it yesterday. When they moved Ian Cole for assets, the Penguins hurt themselves.
Well, I mean, in that instance, yes. I'm not in favor of moving players for assets when you're in the position that Pittsburgh is of winning another Stanley Cup. I'm talking about a team that has legitimately little chance of winning a Stanley Cup in the next 2 or 3 years. That is when you move players for assets. It's where you are at the time.
But maybe Weber want to move, and that's another thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, last thing I'll say, and we'll get out of here. The thing about Weber is the fact that he is also a great quarterback of the entire team back there. So he's guiding young defensemen around and showing them what he's always pointing, he's always talking. Like you'll see when a team comes in and he's one of the 2 defensemen that are skating backwards. His hands are up, he's yelling stuff. And that's really important to a team like Montreal that doesn't have a lot of experience back there. So he
was a great help to Sergachev. Oh, wait a second. Sorry, they traded Sergachev.
Oh, man.
That was just evil.
We got right to the end without a Montreal Canadiens thing. Cut. Anyway, remember, without the buzz, folks, it is just hockey. Tomorrow we will be talking about Game 7. And but it was fun talking rumors today. Thanks so much for watching.
And we will have Kevin Allen tomorrow.
Oh, great. We'll have Kevin Allen ahead of Game 7 tomorrow. That's going to be so much fun. And we just can't wait. So we'll talk to you then. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you soon.